does having advanced degrees necessarily mean that you have more job opportunities? I think this very much depends on the job. Some jobs require certain advanced degrees in order to be considered, even considered for the position. For example, if you wanted to be a medical doctor, you need to have an MD. Anybody without an MD is not going to be considered for a doctor position. You should always review the job description for the required qualifications versus the preferred qualifications to find out if your dream job requires you to have an advanced degree. As an example, to show that you don't necessarily need an advanced degree in order to do well in your career. For instance, I know a lot of VPs, VPs from certain departments. They don't necessarily have a PhD or an MD. Some of them only have a bachelor's degree, and they naturally do fairly well in their career. In my line of work, I work in clinical operations. People actually care more about whether you can deliver, whether you can meet the deadlines and meet the study milestones, and how effective you are at your job, and not necessarily what degrees you have. Depending on the job positions that you're interested in, the bottom line is that you may not need an advanced degree to get to do well in your career.
And somehow,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you again. Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry, I dropped off for a second. Going back to my last point. So I was talking about the tuition costs under pros and cons. So graduate programs can be expensive if you're thinking about getting a master's degree. I know that some PhD programs, you get a stipend and you don't need to pay tuition. So it really depends on what graduate programs you're interested in. So you need to ask yourself whether the advanced degree that you're interested in actually provides you with the knowledge and skills that are in demand and have a job market that will pay for itself. You need to ask yourself whether the advanced degree is a good career investment for you or not. And then these are things to think about before deciding whether you want to go into grad school or not. And one major con, I would say, for attending grad school is the opportunity cost. In the biotech industry, a lot of times work experience and your know-how will trump having advanced degrees. Hiring managers want to hire people already know how to do the job and not spend a lot of time training them. Having a master's degree or a PhD may or may not mean that you have the right skill set and the know-how for a particular job. It really depends on what job you're applying for. As an example, if you invest the next 5 years pursuing a PhD, someone who just got out of college and starts on an entry-level position at the same time as you, as you're working through as you're completing your PhD degree, that person may jump from an entry-level position to a director level role in 5 or 6 years. I actually know people who have done that. So these are things you need to think about. Don't go to grad school if you don't have passion for it and if you don't know what your end goals are. For me, in order to avoid the opportunity cost of stopping my career midway while pursuing my master's degree, what I did was I worked full-time while going to while attending school for my master's program part-time. And I did that for 4 years before I completed my degree. And if anyone is interested in connecting after today's workshop, you can find me on LinkedIn. Next, I'll hand over to 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗏 for him to introduce himself. 𝗧𝗶𝗆.
Sure. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. So my name is 𝗫𝗍𝗍𝗏. I always go by my last name, so 𝗧𝗏. I'm currently a senior associate scientist at Johnson & Johnson at Pennsylvania. So about my educational background, I went to Chang'e University in Taiwan for my bachelor's and master's in biological sciences. And you know, at that moment, I was actually very interested in pursuing for a PhD, you know, overseas in the United States. But then after, you know, the discussion with my, you know, girlfriend and now my wife, about this dream, I realized that it might be better for living style consideration to just give up or hold this dream for the moment. So I end up pursuing for a second master's in a different area in chemical engineering from Rutgers University. And then just after that, start my career, my industry job, right? And actually now thinking back, I think that's a good decision because I'm happy with my current life and with my what I have, right? So and I will elaborate more about why I choose not to do a PhD, and then how I feel about that right now. So and then so after the masters, I start my industrial job as America's contract scientist, and that is in vaccine process development. And that is actually where I learned everything about bioreactor, which is my my major skills now, right? And then after that, about 10 months, I went to Pfizer. I found my full-time employee position over there, and then it's also vaccine process development. And then I've been there for about 2 years, 2.5 years, and work on bacterial fermentation, mammalian cell culture, and even mRNA vaccine, right? And about 2 years ago or years ago, I found this CAR-T area is really growing, quite fast, and it's really fascinating. So I switched gear to cell therapy with Johnson & Johnson, and yeah, so that's about me. Do we talk more about our thoughts about not pursuing for a PhD but entering into the industry right now? Okay, we do, right? All right, so yeah, like I say, it's about so I prioritize the living style, right? Because I think most of you guys know, if you go to do the PhD, it won't be just 2 years, right? It'll be like 4 or 5 years at least, and then your salary won't be too good, right? Because you're getting a training, right? So so comparing to that, I rather to start working in the industry, to build up my industry skill, right? For example, bioreactor, this is something that you won't necessarily be able to learn from school. And because of the fact that you learn this real world skill set, right? So it become more valuable, and so the company will be willing to pay you more, right? So over time you build up all these skill sets and your knowledge and your experience, and so you are more valuable and you earn more money, right? I think this is something I don't know, maybe shallow, but it's more practical, right? It's real, right? So that's one thing, the living style, and the second thing about prioritize working start a career in the industry is that in that moment I was actually thinking about that I want to learn more about how people develop therapeutics from end to end in the industry instead of getting specialized in a specific area. So yeah, that's actually the second part of this thinking is to go into the industry to learn how pharmaceutical company doing the drug discovery and also the development, and then what else need to be done after the the research has been taking place, how to bring that to the patient. So that's my thinking at that time. So I hope this is useful to you.
Cindy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗍. I am currently a senior scientist at Merck, Cambridge, and Boston in neuroimmunology group. So I obtained my undergrad degree in immunology and graduate degree in neuroscience, both from McGill University, Canada. And after that, I accumulate almost 17 years work experience, both in academic institutions, major or smaller biotech and pharmaceutical industry. So my work is primarily focused on the early discovery and basic research, which is range from study the mechanism of action, target identification, assay development, and drug screening and lead optimization, plus a little bit preclinical work regarding to the PK/PD study and drug combinational therapy. So today I will share some of my observation and experience and talk about my personal thought and opinion regarding to the ecosystem of the industry, particularly focused on the research division. So I want to mention that the whole industry is huge, require many different people and functions to work together. Of course, different role and different function require different skill set and different knowledge, but also they have a very distinct lifestyle and work challenge. On the other hand, they also reward differently in terms of different kind of fulfillment and the joy. So you can imagine that the different role require different personality and characteristics. Therefore, first knowing yourself and finding where you fit in the industry and continuously adjust yourself, adapt to the quick change of the environment, actually it's a lifelong homework to everyone. So you may find one common similarity between all the speakers today is that we do not hold a PhD degree before we enter or advance our career in the industry. Then everybody must have their own background, situation, or reason to do so. Then in my case, I made this decision because I oversee the big picture of the academia and industry early when I was an undergrad student. So in Canada, actually, if you were lucky enough, you could finish your final exam early in April and end up with almost 5 months summer vacation, which is sufficient enough for you, a student, to learn or see something new. So fortunately, I spent 3 years at Academia Sinica, Harvard School of Public Health, and the MIT Center for Cancer Research as a summer intern. So there, I'm not only to learn the lab technique, but more importantly, to see what the real scientific life and the scientific career path is. So from those experiences, I learned 2 important things. First, I really like to do the basic research. Actually, not everybody actually enjoys spending long hours pipetting on the bench and facing the uncertainty of the discovery project and endure the pressure from your PI, your peer, or yourself. But on the other hand, it is a beautiful part of the research that you can always find something new and see whatever people never see and continuously ask the question and find a way to answer the question. It is what the research is. But however, the second thing I realized is you have to be unique and special enough to be competitive for the job market. Actually, there are 3 realities I learned for the life scientists from those experiences. First, different from other professions. Like other people already mentioned, that the life science professional training takes a long time, which require not only PhD, but also the postdocs usually. And altogether, if you are extremely lucky, you could possibly down by within 6 to 7 years, which is also rare for the lab-based scientists, by the way. And on the other hand, a lot of things not under your control. If anything go wrong, it can be easily extended to 10 years, 12 years, or longer. I heard so many cases about it. A second thing is not only the duration, but also the payment. So the salary of the postdoc and PhD is not comparable with the real life job. So I saw so many postdoc students struggling to sustain themselves and supporting their family. For your information, around the year 2000, Harvard postdoc pay around 20 to 22K. MIT pay a little bit better, it's plus minus 25K. In comparison, the assistant professor at Harvard pay around 70 to 75, and entry-level master scientists pay range from 35 to 50 or 60, and PhD level scientists probably around 55 to 75 or 80. That's around year 2000 to 2005. Yeah, so we have to consider cost of living. And the third thing I realized is that there is a huge imbalance of the supply and demand for the job market. So I just find out, well, there are a ton of the outstanding PhD and postdoc everywhere in the academia. You can consider, well, if you say top-notch university in the United States, maybe there are 50. If you consider all around the world, at least 200 great universities and institutions, and each university, maybe let's say 100 labs or different PI, and each lab, the smaller one may have 2 or 3 postdocs. The bigger one can be up to 30 or 50. So let's do the count. If you say average 5 postdocs in the lab, 5 times 100 times 200, it's already 100,000 people in the whole academia. Sooner or later will look for a job. And there are really not that many openings in the industry. So all this reality scare me. Anyway, how to pursue my scientific career together with facing this reality is always a question to me. So I decided to build my career path differently. So the graduate school system in Canada, everybody starts as a thesis-based master student. And similar to the European system, we took minimal amount of course, very little amount of course, and majority of time you focus on your research project. And when you finish your thesis, you can consider staying in the same lab for the PhD, or switch the lab or do something else. So in my case, I am lucky enough to publish one of the first author paper on Journal of Neuroscience when I finished my master's study. And then I decided not directly continue for PhD, which is everybody do. If you go everybody path, eventually you will be one of everybody, same as everybody, and then it will be less competitive for the job market. That's what I was thinking at that moment. So therefore, I came to United States as a research specialist at the UCSF. Particularly first, there's more opportunity in the United States than Canada. And also I can change from my in vitro experience to the in vivo animal modeling. And later on, before 2008 financial crisis, actually, I luckily joined Merck at West Point as an entry-level scientist. At that moment, I was thinking to spend few years in the industry before I applied for the PhD. However, after I entered the industry, I find first, there are so many very interesting and cutting-edge research over there. And also, in the major pharmaceutical, they give you tremendous amount of support and resource to do the interesting research, which is very different from academia, I find. I remember in academia, every time I spend $100, I have to argue with my boss, struggling, should I do this or not? In the industry, it's a completely different story. If you're doing the right track, you get, I never reached my limit yet for the support. Eventually, time goes quickly, and then I changed from Merck to Genentech back to the California, and then to a smaller company called Pharma, and later on being acquired by AbbVie. And eventually, I rehired back to Merck Boston as a senior scientist. And each period of time allowed me to learn and experience something new, and we can talk more about it later on. So that's my brief introduction. Thank you.
Next slide. Next up, we have Ben. Ben, would you like to briefly introduce yourself and then your personal reasons for why not you pursued an advanced degree?
Sure. So my name is Ben Greenbow. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Biochemistry, Business, and English, I guess comparative lit technically, from the University of Iowa. I've been working now for 20 years, both in academics and industry, very briefly in academics and then more in industry, probably 4 years in academics and 16 in industry. So I've been at the bench and then moved. What else can I tell you? My job, if you kind of look me up on LinkedIn, I basically am the living embodiment of kind of matrix development. And if the one thing I could get you to think about is not looking at things as black and white or binary, and thinking of things as more of like a continuum over time, because if you're working in the United States, you're going to be working for 40 to 45 years before you hit retirement. And that is a long time to work. And that leads to a lot of opportunity to maybe try some different things and maybe leverage skills along the way. And maybe I can be an example of that for people that haven't quite thought that through. I come from a family of chemists. My dad's a PhD chemist. He's a professor. My mom's a chemist. She was a medical chemist. My brother's a chemist. So I grew up in West Lafayette, Indiana at Purdue University. And my first memories as a kid is my dad working with his thesis advisor on his thesis and the amount of work that took and what the back end of it looked like when he got his first job. So that was a very informative experience as a child. You know, you put in all this work and then you end up as a assistant professor on a postdoc at a low-level state college. So that was one thing that was always in the back of my mind as I continued to develop as an adult. The other thing I started to learn and kind of pay attention to, because I had the opportunity to growing up in an academic kind of background, is the academic business is very different from the business. And it kind of, you got to decide which side of the fence you live on as far as that goes, in terms of a PhD at the base of it teaches it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. And it's how you want to leverage that mindset to like its fullest potential. In academics, the endpoint is publishing, sharing your research, getting grants in order to do that research, and contributing to the overall basic knowledge of like the subject matter, right? In business, it's kind of taking that basic research and monetizing it. And that's usually how it works in the United States. Is public colleges do a lot of basic biology, and businesses pick up on it and run with it and try to turn them into things that can be marketed and sold, right? And so I kind of grew up in a farming community, and it was a lot of like ag genetics, and I got very attracted to kind of working in kind of genetics when I was a kid, and I had the opportunity to work for the USDA on what became Roundup Ready soybeans, kind of hybridizing those, doing multi-generational things, moving plants between China and Puerto Rico and the United States generationally in order to advance the cell line. This was all before CRISPR was even like a thing, which gave me some good experience on how academics and business kind of touch each other. Then I had the opportunity to work for the University of Iowa's Holden Comprehensive Cancer Center, where I kind of came out of a research lab working on cytotoxin research and kind of got recruited to look at kind of how the hospital there was running its clinical trials with industry and turn that more into a business. And so my first really, other than kind of working with the USDA, was working for the University of Iowa and trying to monetize their clinical trial, which is essentially what 𝗠𝗍𝗍𝗍 does. She's working with the sites that are basically treating those trials like a business, and they're trying to monetize what they do. And it's kind of like, it's a symbiotic relationship between academics and business. Right? And so I had the opportunity to kind of learn the academic side of that relationship. And then I got recruited to Boston and worked at Genzyme, kind of like 𝗠𝗍𝗍𝗍 does, and was a clinical trial associate working on some studies in France. So I learned the industry side of it. Then I got recruited to Vertex, where I had the opportunity to go into the formulation development group. So now I'm 20 something. I've worked as kind of a lab researcher. I've worked in the business office for a major cancer center. I've worked as a clinical trial ops kind of person. And now as a formulation development person, kind of working on, developing tablets for a major phase 2, phase 3 program that became 𝗬𝗎𝗍𝒃, and it was one of the first marketed products Vertex had, and it was the first one on their own. So I'm 27. I've worked on an NDA from the manufacturing side. I do it again with what became Kalydeco, which is a major blockbuster drug for Vertex and the basis of the company. So by the time I'm 29, I've worked on 2 marketed drugs from a formulation perspective. I get asked if I want to do the same kind of thing from a process chemistry end. So that's building on what I've done in the formulation realm. Not a formulator. I have no PhD in engineering or formulation or pharmacology. I'm not a PhD chemist. But what I am able to do is able to pick up on things, learn from it, and translate it into a different subject matter. From there, I worked in process chemistry, looking at large batch failure modes on some of our larger kind of clinical trial supplies. And then got asked if I wanted to run project teams from a CMC manufacturing perspective, which included contracting, managing vendors, managing integrated scientific teams, and did that for a couple of years. And then got asked if I wanted to integrate that with the preclinical and research end of things, and ran program strategies for assets basically coming out of, the basic research end and taking them through from a preclinical side, at least into clinic, and then from a manufacturing side through phase 3 and onto validation and commercial scale. After doing that for a couple of times, I worked on what became our next gen CF franchise and what made the company today called 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲𝗏. So that's my third marketing application in under 10 years of working in industry. Got the opportunity to run integrated soup to nuts disease strategy teams, and that's working with high-level executives at the company, taking our kind of disease areas out of research and building them into integrated marketed programs supporting the disease area. And so that's touching on research, development, commercial, legal, communications, industry, academics, manufacturing, preclinical. So it's kind of like one of those things where, due to my curiosity, it kind of led me into a job that was kind of my ideal, which was understanding drug development from beginning to end and being able to understand each of those pieces, how they fit, and how to progress something through each of those stages and into marketed products.
Hey, Ben, I have one quick question. Can I
Sure.
ask a question? Yeah, sounds like your experience is very broad and interesting. But like I mentioned earlier, the different role require different personality and characteristic. So how do you fit all different role? Or anyway, to me, I probably cannot do certain kind of role. I'm more research person, but how you switch, or probably not everybody can do everything like you do. How you advise this kind of.
So it depends, to your point, it depends on your interests, right? And so when I was in school, again, because getting a PhD is one of the first, like you get to near the end of your bachelor's degree and you start to decide, what do you want to do? Here's what I knew what I didn't want to do. I knew I did not want to spend 5 or 6 years studying eukaryotic or yeast genomics of a certain gene that may knock something out and produce a protein, and add to the body of work around yeast genomics. I knew I didn't want to do that. That didn't interest me. What I was interested in is, how do you take something like that and turn it into something that's useful for people? And that was something I kind of picked up on even going back to when I was a kid, is how do these things that all these people I know that work on things in academics, what happens to them and where do they go, right? And even for me coming out of school, I thought I was going to be a patent lawyer until I worked with patent lawyers and tried it. And then I realized they're not happy people and it would not be a good lifestyle choice for me. So I did everything right up to including getting accepted into law school. And then at the last minute, just decided not to do it. And then I had to figure out what I wanted to do. So what I did was I took a job in a research lab in the basement of the hospital, kitty corner to the morgue, working on a really basic cell line, studying biophysics and cytotoxins. And then happened to run into somebody that I'd met doing something like this in the lobby of the hospital getting coffee one day, who asked me if I was interested in learning the business end of things, and turned that into my next job at the cancer center, kind of doing clinical trial operations stuff. So it's more of a get a good, like from my perspective, for me, my key was I got a really good base education and I was really curious and I loved science. But I turned that love of science into something that was not necessarily science at different points in my career. I was able to leverage things around using, statistics and science and how like legal people might want to look at that and how those things can be communicated amongst different functions and different teams from different perspectives, and how those things can be moved from one stage to another. Hopefully that was helpful.
Well, Ben, it's amazing the breadth of knowledge and experience that you have had in your career. And thank you so much for being one of our speakers today. We're lucky to have you. Yeah, and I just want to echo one point that Ben brought up, networking. I think it's extremely important, networking. I would say that all the jobs that I have had in the biotech industry, I got it through networking. Somebody referred me to a new company. So if anything, if any point people wanted to take away today, networking is definitely one key point I wanted to stress. I think we can move on to the next slide. All right, so here's our first set of questions today. They have to do with career goals. I would like to invite 𝗧𝗍𝗍 and Ben to share your experience. 𝗧𝗍𝗍, would you like to go first?
Sure. The career goal, actually, you guys hear from Ben, and then he finds what he doesn't like or what he like. That will be the starting point for your career goal. Or, well, I mean, to me, I will answer the question. The career goal is not about how you promote it, be a big person. It's why you do this job. So to me, I'm always questioning, ask the people, or you can ask yourself, why you go to work every morning? What's the motivation for you to be there? So to me, actually, I do like basic research part. So my work is always research. I'm more like an industry and academia in between. So I don't mind spending time study the genomic, study a little thing on the cell, understand the basic mechanism. So every day my passion is there to know a little bit more about what's going on. You design the experiment, every experiment will tell you something. And next day you learn something more and you design different experiment, it tells something. Eventually you add them together, it's a big picture. So therefore, that's my passion. But somehow, like I said, in the company is big. Different role have a different function and doing different things. Certain people don't like it. If you put Ben on my role, he will be so boring, right? Like he was saying. Then he's doing a bigger thing. But on the other hand, it might put me to the legal. Maybe I cannot handle it. So my career goal is to be able to learn something new and to make me grow every day. And then eventually, later on, probably we'll share certain questions that people ask online is how to be promoted. Promotion, it comes after you achieve your goal. I personally don't think promotion is your goal. If you put promotion as your goal, you will be very frustrated. You can never get it. You will see why these people promote before me, and why that people, everyone have a different criteria, different company have a different standard. So you have to move on your career based on your own pace, your interest. And that's my career goal. And how do I set my career goal? It's just based on my experience, or like Ben, he looked for around search for what he likes. Or 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗍 also have a different division, different function, have a different reward. And then eventually you should reward from your day-to-day work. Yeah, that's one thing I will say.
And do you have anything to add or anything additional you wanted to share?
Sure. I think the one, even though 𝗧𝗍𝗍 and I may have, very different jobs, the one thing I think we both agree on is we do things we enjoy and we gravitate to those things. I think that's just really important from a career perspective as you're kind of searching for what you want to do, is to keep your mind open and not necessarily, completely like I love bench science. I just wasn't very good at it. I still love it to this day. Like I stayed in the lab as long as I could until they kicked me out. But it was just because I just wasn't as good as everybody else. And it wasn't my superpower, right? But what my superpower was figuring out, hey, I can take that and I can communicate what they're doing in a way that people that aren't necessarily involved in it understand. And I can project out what we might be able to do with something that 𝗧𝗍𝗍 might be working on in a way that isn't just, like what 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗍 sees it. I might see it as like a novel approach to like targeting something that could be turned into a new drug. And I'm sure that's somewhat like what he's doing, but it's the bigger picture of how that goes from that to being developed, to going into an animal model, to going into tox studies, to being scaled to go into humans and testing a clinical hypothesis, right? And then on to something in terms of like developing it as a commercial entity. And along the way, the focus and what matters changes. I think that's the one thing that I've really enjoyed having done this job now for a bunch of years, is the fact that as you take an asset through, and if you're doing it in an integrated way like I get to do, you get to turn all those different parts of your brain on. When I'm working on an early research stage asset, what I think and do is very different than when I'm working on something that's a commercial asset.
Yes, that's good point. That important superpower. From our discussion, all the audience can see how we collaborate together. Yeah, actually, everybody only have 24 hours. You don't have that much time. If I spend all time to communicate, I don't have a time to dig into the deep scientific question. you need someone like me good at lab. That's my superpower. I'm not superpower to talk to everyone. But then Ben will take that part to work together to make whole company collaborate. And 𝗧𝗶𝗺 or 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲 have a different part to add everybody's strength together and eventually whole the company become a whole. Yep.
Yep. Drug discovery and development is the ultimate team sport. It's expensive and requires a lot of people who are very good at a lot of different things.
Yep,
but for me, like my career goals were just to figure out something that like all I had in my head after I decided what I didn't want to do was I want to find something that keeps me interested. Right. And like probably like Sydney, I thought I was going to go back to grad school eventually. You know, and what I tell people I mentor is like, keep an open mind, do this for like 3, 4, 5 years, and then think about, you know, how be flexible, you know, don't buy a house, don't fix yourself in one place. If you really want to do it, it requires some flexibility, and think about it. And then think about what you want to do with it. And then for me, it was just, I was having more fun and learning more doing what I was doing than going back to school. Because I feel like I had got a lot of those skills in industry that I probably would have picked up in a lab. And the only thing I'm missing is the 3 letters after my name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then from my perspective, just to share a little bit more, I think there's more to work in life. So for me, you also need to think about the stage where you are in your life stage. Some people want to have children, want to have a family. They want to spend more time on their hobbies. Life is not all just about work. So you need to know yourself, know what's important to you. Some people, they are very motivated in climbing the corporate ladder. They want to get from, I don't know, an entry-level position to a director level role in like five years. I've seen people who are like that, but there are also people who value spending more time with their family, having children, stuff like that. And then that's going to take time away from your work. Some people care more about work-life balance. So you need to decide for yourself what's important for you. So it's a very personalized, individual decision. Yeah. I think we can go on to the next slide. All right, so the next set of questions have to do with whether companies support employees in getting a higher degree, and then if so, how do you initiate such a discussion? I'll share a little bit from my experience. So I would say most companies have a tuition reimbursement program where they will reimburse you up to a certain amount for any educational expenses. Say if you want to take a class or you want to start a degree that's relevant to your job duties at your current company. And then in the past, if I'm interested in taking a class, which I have done, that's related to my job duty, I would let my manager know and then get their approval before signing up for the class. And then I will say that not all managers will be supportive of their employees pursuing a higher degree, because that can be seen as taking time away from doing their job. So just so you know, it really depends on your relationship with your manager. And also, you have to proactively discuss about your desire to, get a higher degree or attend a class with your manager. Otherwise, your manager wouldn't know. I mean, I have met good mentors and who are also my manager who have suggested to me, hey, Chen, there's this great class. I think that'd be a great fit for you. I think you will expand your skill set. There are great managers out there that are like that. But then it cannot be, you can't expect to meet one. I mean, it's just like sort of happens. So say if you don't, you would have to initiate that conversation with your direct manager to talk about it. For this set of questions, I would like to invite 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲 and Sydney to share a little bit more from your experience. Maybe we can start with 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲.
Sure. So yeah, so I guess I was, before I answer this question, I think all the companies, they have the same mindset, right? They for sure will be willing to develop their employees, but then whether they can support the employee to get a higher degree, that depends, right, on setting and the resources. So I'm now just speaking based on the company that I ever worked for. So they do all have these resources, to sponsor the employee to get higher degrees or MBA, masters, or PhD, actually. And yeah, so that's my answer to the first question. And then how to initiate the conversation, right? So for my case, I actually still have this, dream to pursue for a PhD, right? Like I mentioned before. And then now I'm actually I'm lucky enough that I'm in a more economically comfortable status that I can spend some of my energy to pursue this scientific achievement. So I want to do my PhD, and that's something that I'm interested in too. Been forever, right? So how do you initiate this conversation with my boss, right? So I know I have always been known that that Johnson & Johnson do sponsor their employee to do PhD, right, if they want. But then how to initiate this, right? So I didn't really just start this conversation, first time I met with my boss, right? I make sure that I deliver first. I deliver something that they want, right? Something is burning first, right? So you have got to, thinking about all these from a manager's point of view. You fulfill what they want first, and then you start asking about your what you're looking for, and tell you need to be transparent, be honest about why you want to do this, right? And then why is this good for them as well, for the company as well, right? So for me, it's very simple. I just directly tell my manager that yeah, now you already see my capability of what I can deliver, right? And this is my little dream that I want to have more achievement in science, and so I want to do this PhD in with certain schools, certain professor, right? And I want to have your endorsement on this. I want to have your support, right? And then yeah, so for me the case is relatively simple because there are already existing examples in our department, in our company. So it's not something like brand new, right? So like it's really just something that my manager need to mention to her boss or to his boss, and then to get approval and to get the money to support this degree. So yeah, so for me it's like this. And I think the take home for the audience whoever want to do PhD or advanced degree sponsored by the company, I think is yeah, you need to plan this well, right? You need to deliver first, and then be honest with your boss, and then also be honest with yourself, right? If you really want to do this, because this is, if we're talking about a degree instead of just a certificate, the degree is kind of a long-term commitment, right? Especially for the PhD, that'll be 3 to 5 years, right? For sure. So yeah, you need to be honest with yourself if this is something that you want to do, and if this is something you can do, right? And your family can support. So yeah, that'll be my response to these two. Cindy, do you want to add something?
All right, I'll add a little bit regarding to this. Actually, doing your advanced degree in the company, actually, that's what I first learned when I interviewed with Merck in 2007, long time ago, my first experience at Merck. By the way, at that time, Merck have a formal program to support their employee to do PhD. It's no more, by the way. It's suspended. This program was there before 2010. But also, I can say there's a few different perspectives to look at this. First, not every company support this kind of thing, because usually major pharma would have a leisure, money, and time for you to do your own advancement. Small company usually not. Every money comes and all the time is valuable. That's first thing. And second, even the major companies, by the way, over the past 10 or 15 years, the industry changed, company changed, everywhere changed. So the one thing, by the way, when that's what I first learned in the company PhD degree at Merck. When I go to Genentech, first, Genentech doesn't have this program, but I communicate with my boss, and they are pretty supportive. And another thing I want to mention is company have a different division. Different division have a different kind of focus and goal. And my work is research department. So our work is very easy to translate to the academia, to collaborate with academic institution. So we are more research orientated than other departments. Different department may have a different perspective. And anyway, fortunately at Genentech, I work with our CSO, 𝗧𝗶𝗵𝗲𝗏, so he has a big power to elaborate. But another thing I want to mention is, even though we set up everything ready, like everybody know, the PhD will take long time, at least 3, 4, 5, or depend. But then you need a certain stability for you there to finish your PhD. So when I set up this program, well, Mark went to Rockefeller as a chancellor, and my boss changed and the project changed. So it is somehow a little bit hard for a company to have one continuous project for more than 5 years for you to complete. That's another thing you have to consider, the quick change in the industry. So even you set up this opportunity change, or layoff, can reorg, and many things can happen within 3 or 5 years. That's another thing. But yeah, that two things. Eventually, when I come back to Merck, one thing eventually I will say is, like, your passion there is not for the degree, but for enrich your capability. So right now I take advantage from everything I learned in the company, and I could publish the paper. So I feel everything every day I'm doing is no different from a PhD or postdoc. And I'm doing, eventually, if I can get a degree, that's great. But most important, if you can prove you're a good scientist. So whatever you're doing the next job, it's not looking for your degree only, but how you convince them you're good enough. So probably the nice paper is one thing, or when you during the interview you can talk to them, they know what you know. That's another thing. So later we can talk about how to practice your interview skill or kind of quality we are looking for when you hiring the new people. Yeah.
Yep.
Can I add one thing from a manager's perspective?
That was what I was asking you, Ben.
Yeah, no worries. So just kind of building on what Sydney was discussing, it's, for me, sitting in the other side of the chair, it's what's your value to the company, and what value of you doing this are you going to add to the company and or to what we're doing, right? Because again, it's a time investment and on top of the money investment, right? So just when you're thinking about that, really think about the business proposition in terms of what's your value to the company, how is this going to bring like the return on that investment back, and what are you going to do with it? And the other thing I would caution, if you're doing it to, again, Sydney kind of mentioned this earlier, if you're doing this to get a promotion, you're doing it for the wrong reason, because it's not always going to end up like that.
Great responses. I think we can move on to the next slide. Alrighty. So how do you advocate for yourself to advance your career, and how should you approach your boss to achieve your goals? What are the pros and cons of not having an advanced degree in your role? So I will share a little bit about from my own experience, and then I would like Sydney and 𝗧𝗶𝗵𝗏 to share theirs as well. So how do you advocate yourself? I would say I used to be, in the earlier days of my career, I used to be really shy about asking for raises and promotions from my employers. But then after having changed jobs for a few times now, my advice would be to let your manager know about your career goals, and then develop a plan with them on the next steps of how to get you to the next level as part of the performance review process. And also, your manager is not a psychic. Do not assume that they know that you're eager to get to the next step. There are people who are content staying where they are. I've known people stay in the same position for 5, 10 years. They're just happy where they are. They want to plan there for 40 hours per week, and then just go home, do their thing. There are people that are like that too. So don't assume that your managers just know what you want in terms of your career. Take control of your own career. If you have a good manager, they usually will help you develop the skills necessary to get you to the next level and guide you along the way. That's my definition of a good manager. And then just a little bit more to add a little bit more nuance to this. Sometimes raises and promotions have more to do with internal politics, a company's internal budget and organizational structure, than anything to do with your performance. And then luck sometimes may be at play too. Also, I would say that if you're shy about advocating for yourself at work, I would recommend you to read books that will make you feel empowered. A couple of books that I've read are Negotiating at Work and Know Your Value. I would recommend people read those two books, and hopefully you'll learn something from them. The second part to this question, the pros and cons of not having an advanced degree. So as I mentioned previously, I work in clinical operations where we have to coordinate clinical trials with our internal functions and also with external vendors. I would say in my line of work, you don't need an advanced degree to get ahead. As a matter of fact, the VPs within my department, they don't usually have an advanced degree. A lot of them only have a bachelor's degree, and then sometimes they'll have an MBA to sort of supplement their leadership experience. So that's that. But I know that in other functions or in other departments, you do need an advanced degree to get to, like, for example, the director level and above positions. I guess I'll have Sydney. I will have Sydney to start and then Xiao, so I can add. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I like the way you asked the question. Is how you advance your career, not like we already talked about, not promote your promotion. Back to one key point we were talking about, you are not always thinking about promotion, but you're always thinking about how to grow in your career. Then by the way, I like a Chinese martial art novel. So I can always use the martial art novel as an analogy that when you read a martial art novel, then the main character always spend a long time practicing different skill or martial art model in how to say this, 不同的招式. Anyhow, so in your career, you take an opportunity to develop. And then somehow I find it even more fun because every day you can learn something. Company pay you money and you learn something. That's a good perspective. But however, by the way, like Ben mentioned, what you learn will benefit your company too. So you have to find a mutual benefit. But on the other hand, if you can learn something benefit your company, a company will willing to invest you. So that's one thing you have to find align with company goal, align with your boss goal. That's another thing I want to mention here is it's not all about your goal, but what my perspective is when you hire, first, how you get hired by the opening, you have to understand what your boss goal. The reason I hire someone because we need someone to help to do this, not because you want to do this. So during the interview, you have to understand this opening, what kind of stuff they need, how can you contribute. Even when you are in the company, you have to align with your boss to help your boss to achieve their goal. If they achieve their goal, you achieve your goal. Then that's my perspective and philosophy. I see some people have a reverse way around, always tell us what I want to do and finally have a tension. Or I think we should understand your boss first and then align the goal. And then second thing is I'm a little bit more conservative. What I mean is I usually will perform myself before I advocate to my boss. At least I will spend 4 months to 6 months to perform on what I'm doing now and prove I'm on the right track before I can approach my management boss to advocate my plan in the future. In that case, you have more standpoint to discuss, and then also you build more trust. Then eventually, for the second question you mentioned is pro and con not to have an advanced degree, which first I will say from the research division perspective, to be honest, you do have certain limitation with without advanced degree. What I mean is, first, for the research department, I will say more than 80% of people have a PhD degree, or mostly. And on the other hand, if you are good, you could be able, like my job, senior scientist right now is equal to the PhD postdoc with 5 years experience. And based on my boss told me, at Merck, we have no limitation even at then to the principal scientist, associate principal. But after that, it is very rare. So first, depend on what you finally want to end up with. To me, I don't want to be VP. I don't want to be president. I don't want to be like a senior director. I want to focus on science. Instead of, I don't want to, different job, it has different responsibility. At certain level, there's always one thing I find interesting thing is sometimes I have a conversation with my boss, and then she would complain to me that she's getting more and more away from the science, and more involved in business and meeting and coordination things. That's important. Certain people like it, but if you are a very scientific mind, you may not completely adapt to this. So you have to know where you fit in. That's what I was mentioning. But understand the reality of the limitation. But also one thing I would say, different company also have a different limitation. For example, at Genentech, if you don't have a PhD, you have a very, very a lot of limitation. Genentech is very value on your degree and even your publication. It is very unusual case. But in a Merck bigger company, you could advance to a certain level, and then you probably enjoy your doing there. But sometimes you can go to the smaller company. The mid-size or smaller company is more value on what you can contribute, what you can do. Less focus on the degree, I will say less. So I see more people without a PhD degree have a more title advance in the smaller company. But by the way, title also not reflect to exactly what you do. You can call whatever yourself in the 3 people company, you can be CSO, but what exactly you do and enjoy what you do is more important than your title. Yeah.
𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I would just kind of share my personal experience, and then to try to add something on this. So about how I advocate myself to advance my career, right? So totally agree with what Cindy and what Ben mentioned. So about advancing the career, well, I was saying degree, but it's actually advancing the career. So it's not necessarily about the promotion, right? So for me, my career goal is to become an expert in developing the biologics. And so like for me, I was thinking as long as I'm still learning something new and I'm getting a step closer to reach this goal, to become that kind of expert, then I'm advancing myself, right, in my career. So there was the time about two years ago, something like that, and then I was already so good in operating a bioreactor. I understand all the physical chemical principle, how to run the bioreactor to grow your cell, to produce your cells. But then I want something more than that, right? Because if you want to develop the therapeutics, it's not just about how to operate the equipment, right? So I want to know how this process, how this parameter, how this experience is set up, right? So then I just be honest with my manager and I tell him, hey, I'm so good at bioreactor right now, and I don't mind to train more people on this specific type of bioreactor, which I'm good at. But then I want to have this opportunity to have more involvement in the project side, right? In deciding what kind of media to use for this specific cell line, or what type of gassing control to use when you do the scale up, stuff like that. So I want to be like more like a scientist instead of just like an operator. And then my managers agree with that. But then at that moment, you need to think about that. When the manager want to give you more opportunity, that will definitely affect the other people in the team, right? So you need to think for your manager too. And then so keep brainstorm with your manager. You propose something to him, and he will say yes or no, right? So we were fortunate to able to find an older project that has some existing smaller issue, but like it's kind of something that good to be resolved, but not necessary to be resolved. So has been parked over there in the past, and then we found this little project back, and then that got to be assigned to myself, and then so I start working on troubleshooting something for the project instead of just operating the equipment. So to me, that's I would say that's the example to answer this question, that you need to think about what you want to achieve right at the end, and what can be viewed as an advancement for yourself, right? And then when you propose something to your manager, and you think for him to think about the dynamic and the in the team, so like he can easily say yes and green lights what you want to do. So yeah, so that's about that. And then about the pros and cons of not having an advanced degree in my role. So for me, because what I'm doing for my job is process development, this is something that I won't necessarily learn from the school setting. So that by entering the industry earlier, that's definitely a positive thing for what I'm doing. Because you get to become familiar with all those equipment, all those mindset, many years earlier, right? Give you examples. So like right now I'm working on cell therapy, and because this is relatively new, actually a lot of my colleagues, with PhD, but they are all freshly from school, right? So they never done process development in the industry before. So a lot of time they won't understand like why the manager make this decision, make that decision, and then why we do this design this way, right? So but like to me it's just so straightforward, and then so I would say definitely that's a positive side of not go to the grad school for like 4 or 5 years, right? But then what are the cons, right? So I would say the cons is that even though now I've been working in industry for like 4 years now, but then I do think a lot of time you still need to perform first, so you can demonstrate what's your capability. So then the appropriate level of assignment can be assigned to you. You definitely will always need to demonstrate yourself, and then so you can get more advanced the project or challenge, right? And then by resolving those, you prove your capability, and can go to the next level. But yeah, so I was, and then yeah, that would be my thoughts right now.
Sorry, I want to add a little bit more for that. First, also I want to mention that different company have a different career ladder. That's one thing I would say. Certain company have a multiple ladder, like AbbVie have even scientist 1, 2, 3, senior scientist 1, 2, 3, and then so in that case, if you talk about promotion and ladder, you've been promoted frequently. But by the way, every time you promote, your salary only adds very little bit. But on the other hand, also at the old Merck, we have a 15 ladder, and then after 2010, it become only 7. Well, R5 to R7. R7 is Nobel Prize owner. R1, I never see anyone R1. So R2 to R6 is most common. You can imagine in that case, the speed of career advancement and promotion will be different. So that's why every company have a different definition. But usually, one of my manager told me is roughly every 4 years you could be promoted. If you don't talk about like Merck only 4 or 5 ladder, or Genentech only 3 or 4 ladder, they want to be flat. But if you have talking about generally every 4 years you should be promoted, and naturally. And on the other hand, your career advancement is not only limited in the same company. If you are not promoted and you learn a lot, every 4 years you could look for a new opportunity. That's another way to advance your career in the industry, and a lot of people do this too. Yeah.
Thank you, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲 and Cindy, for sharing your experience. Next, I will direct this question to Ben and then Cindy. What are the attributes, skills, experience that you're looking for when you're hiring? Ben, maybe you can start first.
Sure. So I'm going to tie this back to the last question, so I think in pictures, right? So think of this like, as far as addressing your goals, it's the same thing with hiring, right? Think about what the company needs, what your skill set is like a Venn diagram, right? And then what you want. And at its best, there's that little intersection, all three of those things where everything overlaps. And I think that's the best way to kind of like look at the first question, which is think really good and hard about what you're bringing to the table, where you want to be, and what the company needs. And I think as a boss, I respond the best to that kind of framework rather than the litany of things you may or may not have done throughout the year, right? So think higher order like that. And then the same thing in hiring. It's what skill set do I need to fill a gap based off of what we're looking for? And then where do I think you might be, like the really good ones are really projecting out where you might be in 3 years, right? When you get to be mastering what you're doing, what could you do next and how could you expand? And you're looking ahead. And for me, in every job I've ever had, I've always looked to hire somebody that can backfill for me when I want to go off and do something new or different, right? So I'm looking to like basically when I'm hiring, not just for need, it's for people that may or may not replace me down the road. And good hiring managers aren't afraid of that.
𝗧𝗍
All right. First, I will say, actually, recently we are having a lot of hiring right now at Merck, and then we are hiring PhD people and hiring then master or bachelor degree people have a different characteristic we're looking for in criteria. Also, by the way, then usually you can see the industry is like a pyramid, narrow and narrow on the top. So obviously we need more opportunity as a bachelor or master degree opening than PhD. Another thing I want to say, usually if we have a PhD candidate, we need a very specific skill or a very specific field we need. And that's why we need someone with a PhD or postdoc spending 10 years on this. So therefore, if you're looking for neuroscience PhD opening, cardiovascular people have very difficult to compete with those people. And we are looking for specific people first. On the opposite side, bachelor's or master degrees opening, and mostly right now it's a lot of master degree usually. Bachelor, we need someone trainable. That's the most important thing. The two quality we're looking at is someone with a passion. Though you can find it, a passion or not from simply talk to them. But passion, you have to prove your passion. It means if you have a passion, you must have to get some experience to get to this job. Usually passionate people have a lot of lab experience, summer intern, or even do a lot of work when they are in the school. So, and then second thing is trainable. You may not necessarily have all the skill we are looking for, but we could be able to find out someone have a good lab experience or during the interview, we're looking at two things. First, are you a good presenter? You can present idea clearly and you have a good logic. So you may not doing exactly the thing we want to do, but during the interview presentation, you can understand these people have a clear logic, how they ask the question, how they tackle the question, and do they just do the work or do they know the work well? So that's the three quality we're looking for. But ironically and interestingly, right now we interview many people this year from January to now. Somehow it's very difficult to find a very good master degree or bachelor degree candidate. And then that's why, also a lot of PhD people apply for the master degree opening. So it's another direction you can imagine how competitive for the PhD people, how they desperate to find a job sorry, my son was coming here. Yeah, but anyhow, what I mean is, have a good passion and have a very clear logic and prove you have prepare yourself, like some internship, some lab experience, and that will be the three major quality we are looking for a master degree or bachelor's degree candidate.
Yeah, wait.
Oh, I've got like two more that I forgot, which were understand the company and the role, right? And try to show that you understand where that role fits and what you can do with it. That'd be the other two pieces of advice I would give. Like, do your homework. Like, I'll poke on people and just see if they know what we do. Real basic stuff. And if you can't answer that question, it's usually not a good sign. And then the other thing is just specifically making sure that, you know, your mind's eye view of the role is what, you know, a hiring manager may be looking for and asking. And then ask them, you know, what other opportunities there may be down the road too, just so you can get a sense on, are they just looking to Sydney's earlier thing, someone to pipette 8 hours a day, or are there other things involved? It's always okay to ask.
Yep, I absolutely agree with all the points that Sydney and Ben brought up. I will add two more. As somebody who's been like on an interview team, as one of the interviewers, I will say I'm looking for someone who's a good team player, because in the biotech industry, you have to work with a lot of different people from different departments, both internally and externally. I don't want to work with someone who's difficult to, you know, maybe difficult to work with. You know, I'm looking for someone who's easygoing, who I can communicate with. If we hand a piece of work to them, they can actually get it done. Another quality I'm looking for is someone with good communication and soft skills, which is very important, especially the higher you go. Like I would say, yeah, but if you want to go higher, a lot of times you have to communicate in a cross-functional setting that requires you to have great soft skills. These are just two additional points I want to add. Sydney?
Yeah. What you may say, it applies for all the jobs, not only for master's degree, bachelor, or PhD. So you want to be team player, nice people, and very communicative. That's important to all the jobs. Not even for the biotech, for any industry, I guess it is.
Yep. Alrighty. I think we're coming up on the next set of questions. We can go on to the next slide. I will direct those questions to Ben, since you are a manager, sort of like in a manager role. How do you support your direct reports? How do you help them get more visibility? How do you motivate them to do well?
Sure, I think it kind of builds on a lot of what we've discussed, which is, you know, understand what you're doing, show mastery of it, show that you're interested in doing other things, right? And for me, I've always been successful when I've taught somebody else what I'm doing to the point where they can do it. And then I can offer that up as a, you know, hey, look, there's an automatic replacement for me that's ready made to go because I put the time in to do it. And that's something I've kind of like been successful with working with my, you know, my bosses over the years, is like, hey, look, I'm going to bring somebody in. We're going to mentor them up. I'm going to teach them how to do this. I'm going to take on new skills while I'm doing that. And that by the time I find out what I want to do next, I've already replaced myself. Right? So there's that. How do you help your reports gain visibility? This is, as a boss, understanding the workplace and, like 𝗠𝗍𝗍, like you said, some of the internal fun that goes along with working in a large organization and knowing how to navigate that. That is the, other than just having a boss that understands what they're doing, it's knowing how they fit into the business and how to make the business work for them. That's the best thing I think I do from the people I work with, is just understanding the business, our place in it, and how to navigate it. How do you motivate your direct reports to grow professionally? So that's on them. That's where I'm going to say that you have to be your own advocate when it comes to growing professionally, because only you know where you want to go. And then it's communicating that to your manager about how, again, that happy intersection of what you want to do, what the business needs, and what the opportunities are. If they overlap, again, that's the best window to get things like moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Ben, for your response. Let's see. I think, should we skip those questions and then just go to the questions on the QA sheet?
Sure. You're going to share. You want to share by your screen, or do you want to?
Sure. If you don't mind sharing your screen.
People are very interested in promotions. That's a hard one to answer. Like, while you guys are transitioning, I'll just say that's a hard one, because it's a quirky thing between you, the business, need, opportunity, luck. Like there's no really good answer around that. It's just understanding the environment you're in and the people you work with and what the opportunities are. Maybe that's a good way to transition off of that one, but that one's hard.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ben, there's a question.
Yeah, I agree with what Ben said. One thing I want to do, like what Ben said, is understand your environment. So different company is different. Different department is different. So only if you get into the company, you will understand the culture. What I mean, the culture, a certain company have a culture like Genentech, take 10 years to promote from scientist to senior scientist. And you have to publish Cell, Nature, Science, at least 2 papers to promote. It's a Genentech culture. But at Merck, you will have a leadership for the project. That's one of criteria for the promotion. So different company value differently. Also, like I heard Novartis have a technical track. So on the other hand, their promotion is you have a very good technique, can bring your proof you have a good quality, you will be easy to promote. So different companies promote people differently and different functions promote people differently. But one thing I also want to maybe add a little bit, is common rules is to make sure your performance can be quantitative. That's one thing I learned from my boss. But certain department is easy to be quantitative. Development, you can say quantify how much project you involve, how many compound you screen, how you bring it over. Research department is relatively less easy to be quantitative. How many times you fail, or that so that's also very hard to open the question, answer the question in just one simple way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just share that I guess it also goes back to why do you want a promotion? Is it because you feel like your skill sets deserve to be the next level? Are you just looking for more pay? I would say from the pay perspective, I have always had more success with getting more pay if I just switch jobs with another company and getting promoted internally. Like the pay increases a lot more when I switch to another company as opposed to getting an internal promotion. But I'm just speaking from my personal experience here.
I'll add one more thing real quick, and it builds on what you said, 𝗠𝗍𝗱, at the beginning, is networking and having a mentor. Like if your boss isn't going to be these things, figure out somebody who is and ask for help.
Absolutely. Alrighty, I guess we can go to the additional questions that the audience has asked. Should we just start from the top down or bottom up? Any preference? Anybody wants to go first? Ben, Sydney, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗍.
Yeah, I mean, I can go. Yeah, but mine is straightforward, right? So, I think this person is trying to understand, you know, if you have a full-time job and at the same time you are doing the company sponsored PhD, how did that work, right? So, I know, you know, for my case, that is actually separated project, right? So I do have the job that I needed. I do have the project that I need to do for the company specifically, and then the PhD one will be, you know, completely, well, not necessarily completely separated, but like the overlapping won't be 100%, and then and then what you want to do is you would try to have as much as possible, right? In terms of the overlapping between the company work and your PhD work, right? So for example, for my case, because I actually haven't started my PhD, is actually in the process, but then what we are trying to set up is that, for example, the sample generated based on the company's project can be used for the PhD, right? So it's really just about sharing the material and analyze the material in a different way for different purposes. So by this kind of setup can definitely save you some time, right? And then, but then when I was at Rutgers, right, for my master's, I also see this PhD student. He is actually from BMS, and then what she did is actually, so her PhD thesis is actually what he's responsible for to deliver in a company. So that means 100% overlapping, right? So that means it's really just one full-time job actually, and then plus all those logistics for both sides. So yeah, so I hope that kind of answered the first question. And then regarding the schedule, right? You just need to make it happen, right? And then also I would say you would want to try to skip the less important stuff, right? And then try not to be perfect on everything. I think that's the way that I make things happen, right now. Because yeah, I think there's no way you can really do like 2 full-time job, right? And then because you also have you also need to reserve some time for your family, right? So it's really just about how do you fulfill those priority stuff for each side, for each for each job, right? For the company and for the PhD. So yeah, that would be my answer to this.
Yes, I can add a little bit to what 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲𝗧's question answered. Even though I haven't completed a PhD in the company, but I initiated and tried at the Genentech and Merck. Well, one thing I would mention is company change faster than you thought. That's something out of your control. But for my role, I'm a research division, so I can completely use what I work and then translate to the PhD as a thesis, because mine is discovery work, so it's relatively more efficient. But also depend on which school you communicate with. Like for if I remember right, Boston University can have this kind of PhD, industry PhD, but you cannot use your company work, and you have to physically get into the lab at night at different time from what you spend in the company, which is pretty impossible for me to do so. And on the other hand, certain place like a University of Miami, or even certain place, you can use all your company's resource and lab and time to translate to your research PhD thesis. So different institutions, different universities have a different criteria required. Yeah, but major difficulties is you have to make sure your boss, your company have stable enough for the next 3 to 5 years for you to complete your PhD. And for my question first, I think first question they have is, could you share your advice of new graduates without US citizenship? I believe, okay, that's the two different kind of people. First, for the people who do not have a PhD or people who have a PhD. But I think today is a lot of discussion without PhD. First, if you do have a PhD, you are very special personnel. Company are more willing to sponsor your citizenship or green card, I will say. Yeah, and however, to the master or bachelor degree level people, I will say usually it's much harder. By the way, I have never heard about any company sponsor the PhD, non-PhD people for the immigration status. That's one thing. And also, I will say, in general, the biotech industry is more reluctant to sponsor citizenship than other industries. That's what I feel. And Ben or 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲𝗧 can add more on this comment, but that's what I find. And in my case, by the way, I am Canadian. So Canadian have a special visa called TN visa. You can easily to work in the industry without limitation at the beginning. And once you are there, and then my company sponsored me to switch from TN to the green card into the US citizenship. And second question is, what kind of resume stand out from the others in your perspective? So, but also depend on what kind of candidate opening. But let's say at Genentech, I helped my manager to screen the resume for the candidate. First, I want to say this criteria is different from time to time. Before 2010, and before the financial crisis, 2008 is one situation. Around 2000 and 2012, a lot of companies facing their patent cliff is another situation. But nowadays, actually 2 years ago is also different from nowadays. 2 years ago is a lot of opening, and then every company are eager to hire a good candidate. So we are it's very competitive to find a good candidate 2 years ago. But now the economy also changed, it's different. But when I was Genentech, one PhD opening have more than 700 resumes on the table. 700 is very difficult to screen. So it's like playing a poker card. Every resume, you probably heard about it. Every resume, if you can let the hiring manager look at more than 10 seconds, you're already success. And one of the tricks to get more opportunity is you get a referral from someone, because certainly if someone refer a good candidate to me, I will spend time to read the resume. Otherwise, if you're 100, 200, or 300 resume, it's hard to be there. So referral is one thing. That's a trick. But without a referral, another thing I will say is make your resume very neat, very easy to read. Because that's also a little trick, because certain resume is very difficult to read. Imagine if you look at more than 100 resume, little word, and then very compact, and then it's not easy and not pleasure to read that resume. Make your resume very neat, a clear title, good space, a good color too. Also, list your most important criteria at the beginning. There's to my perspective, there is no certain format like you have to type your degree, type your birthday, type thing. Elaborate your highlights part, either your skills, degree, your experience, your anything you think you want your hiring manager to see at first place, put on the top. And then, of course, a good degree, good university, good training, a lot of people have it too. And then, but if you can make it much more visible, they will be also helpful. Yeah, that's what I think about it, the answer so far.
Yep, and then so in the interest of time, we do need to wrap up. I'm going to hand it over to 𝗬𝗃 and 𝗧𝗶𝗺 for them to advertise the annual symposium a little bit.
Oh, thank you so much, 𝗠𝗱🐺, for being our wonderful host, and thank you again for our 3 wonderful speakers to share their invaluable experiences, and also thank you 𝗪𝗪 and 𝗪𝗪 for organizing this wonderful workshop. And my name is 𝗬𝗃, and I'm the co-president of BTBA, and today I would like to take this opportunity to announce our 2022 BTBA annual symposium will take place on July 23rd to 24th, which will be an in-person event in Boston. So we will announce further details, information about our symposium. So please stay tuned and follow our social media for registration information. And then so during this event, we will have keynote speeches, career development workshop, poster presentation, and then working sessions. So it's a great chance for you to come to meet new people, and then also to learn and develop your career. And we are looking forward to seeing you all this summer in Boston. Thank you so much for coming today, and then we are looking forward to seeing you all again in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. So so thank you for joining the workshop. Yeah, see you next time. Thank you all the speakers and the moderator. Yep. Thank you very much.
Bye.